out the numbers. I'm not near as good a Bill at laying out the numbers for you, but I'm going to tell you a story, kind of lay the backstory for what's happening in the sheep industry as well as in agriculture across the country. My sixth-time great-grandfather immigrated to the United States. He brought with him, I didn't expect this one, he brought with him a gold watch that his grandfather had given him. When he reached Fountain Green, Utah, he sold the gold watch and he used it to buy sheep. And he grew his sheep herd. And in turn, as he grew his sheep herd, he would lease these sheep out to other people and they would repay him with more sheep. And that's how the industry got started in the West. My family has been involved with this since way before our country was founded. They brought them here in hopes of opportunity to help grow this country. Most people don't realize this, but most of the cattle ranches in the West were actually bought by sheep. Pre-World War II, there were 56 million sheep in the United States. As the war progressed, many of the farmers went off to war. Many of the sheep were processed to feed the war effort. During World War II, we lost half the sheep population in the United States, around about 22 million. That number held pretty strong until the early 80s. Early 80s, we were around 22 million beginning the 80s. In 1984, my grandpa appeared before the USITC as the president of American Lamb Company. They saw what was happening with the imports, and that was when they really started to come on strong. And he appeared before the USITC to explain the countervailing duty and the anti-dumping cases. They did not get the ruling that they were hoping for. They appealed it a year later, in which they did come up with the finding that there was anti-dumping and that it was causing damage to the American market. They threw on a 17-cent tariff, which didn't do much. It helped alleviate the bleeding for a moment, but it again continues. Fast forward 40 years, we're dealing with the exact same problem today as we were in 1984. I'm here 40 years later than my grandpa, still fighting for the same thing. And yet our government has refused to act. Our government has refused to protect the domestic sheep industry, has refused to protect agriculture in general. I don't know if Bill can find that slide. There's a slide in here. Oh, there it is, right there. Okay, I want you to look at this for a minute. This ought to paint you a stark picture of what's happening here in the United States right now. I mean, look at that. You tell me there's no correlation in causation. You look around 2005, look where it crosses. That graph crosses right at 2005, which is when the U.S.-Australia trade agreement was reached. Tell me again, free trade. People say, I'm a free trader. I'm dear friends with Mike Lee. I don't want to throw him under the bus. But he said, I believe in free trade. I said, yeah, me too. I'd like to try it sometime. Because there is no such thing as free trade. Here in the United States, we are made to exceed the standard of everybody else in the world. We are made to produce at a standard that is higher than everywhere else in the world. We pay taxes. We buy American fuel. We buy American vehicles. We employ Americans and we pay American taxes. Yet we're being made to compete with countries who do none of that. Tell me again how this is free trade. We are bringing in subpar meat, which is doing industry damage, by the way. I don't know about any of you, but if you take and process a lamb in Australia, pack it in a box, put it on the ocean at just above freezing. We're not talking freezing, we're just 33 degrees. Ship it for 32 days, bring it to the United States, put that product on the shelf. Tell me how long it's going to last. Tell me how good that's going to taste. And this is part of the thing that we're not talking about is the market damage that we're not getting. And people that go to the store and buy it and they're like, it doesn't taste very good. lamb isn't that great. Well, yeah, probably not, because it's been sitting for 2 months. This is part of the damage that's happening that we rarely talk about. That is not just the undercutting of our market. They are bringing lamb here from other countries that is undercutting our market by our cost of production. Our cost of production is more than what they're getting it in at retail prices. It is unsustainable. People say, well, can't you just lower the price? No, we cannot lower the cost any lower than what we're going. And as you can see, there is no protection whatsoever. And so that is the picture that I want to lay out. And as we continue to talk about trade policies, we have delved into it in multiple different ways and in multiple different directions. And Chuck has been extremely helpful, as is Bill. 2.5 years ago, Bill and I began meeting with a section of producers from across the country. We represent the group. We meet every other week. We jump on Zoom and we have conversations about what's happening. And as we've started this, it has continued to paint the picture of how dire of a situation the sheep industry is here in the United States. And as Bill mentioned earlier, the sheep industry is the canary in the coal mine, because the beef industry is where the sheep industry was 40 years ago. And if they don't make adjustments, we're going to do the same thing. So if nothing else, maybe we can learn from this. Maybe the politicians can sit down long enough and be able to understand. Because as we were flying out here, you fly over the Midwest, you fly over these farms and you look down at them, and you see the overview. I mean, you see the field sitting out there. What you don't understand, and what many don't understand, is on each of those farms you see a little house. That's a family. That family's probably been there for 4 or 5 generations. This is people's livelihood. This is the backbone of America. People say to me, oh, well, what about chips? What about our manufacturing? What about all of these other things? We need to make sure that we're not dependent on China for our cell phones. You know what I don't want? I don't want to be dependent on China to feed my kids. I don't want to be dependent on South America to feed my kids. Which leads me to the numbers that we really ought to be talking about. And I'm going to end a little bit short, because I'd actually like to open it up for questions and go back and forth with Chuck here. Because I'd like to talk about more than just sheep. Because you can read on the chart there, we're at 5 million head. The lowest we have ever been. There are 6,000 producers left in the United States. That's it. You want to know why we don't ever get help? Is because these are independent ranchers. These are independent farmers. These big corporations, they can run us over because they have the money to do it. Look how much the Big Four, I would love to see the number that the Big Four spends every year lobbying U.S. politicians. JBS has already been indicted multiple times for bribing politicians in South America. What's happening here? It's no different. We don't have a voice as independent producers because we don't have the big dollars to throw together to be able to buy our way in.
And the percentage of lamb.
Yeah, so currently, and I skipped over this, but currently 76%, between 73 and 76% of the lamb consumed in the United States comes from a different country. 76% of that market share goes elsewhere. And that number continues to climb. 76%. But the thing is, people say, oh, I don't eat lamb. I don't know anybody that eats lamb. Consumption of lamb is up 12% year over year. 12%. Look at the consumption. It is up year over year, and yet every inch of that is filled with imported meat. And it's pretty hard when you go to the end buyer and you say, hey, this is the price. This is where lambs are at. This is what we have to break even. And that breaking even would be great. What businesses are you in that you would say, oh, breaking even would be great? Breaking even would be great instead of a perpetual loss year over year. We are in a position right now, and we have set this market up for an existential collapse. And I don't think people realize how close we are. It is going to take one slip, and we will lose another half of the sheep industry in the next 2 years. I have no doubt in my mind. So talking about agriculture in general, because the sheep industry paints its picture for itself, but I'm about to paint you an even starker picture. Look at the trade deficit when it comes to agriculture. I encourage all of you to go out and look that up. 2020, we're at a surplus of $4 billion. 2021, surplus of $10 billion. 2022, a deficit of $2 billion. 2023, a deficit of $16 billion. 2024, a deficit of $31 billion. And 2025 is projected a deficit of $49 billion. We went from a surplus of $4 billion to a deficit of $49 billion from 2020 till 2025.
Well,
Show me another industry that can survive under that kind of market pressure. A country that can't feed itself, can't defend itself. This is a national security risk that nobody is taking serious. We have existential problems in this country. My family has been lobbying for tariffs and tariff rate quotas since the early 80s because we knew it was a problem. We saw what it was doing to the sheep industry. We saw what it was doing to our family, let alone all the other families across the country. I hope to instill upon you the gravity of what's happening, because most other companies, any other company in this situation, they'd have quit a long time ago. Somebody once told me the last things that are going to exist on earth is going to be cockroaches and sheep herders, because they know how to survive. This graph continues to prove that, and I hope that everybody will take it as seriously as what it deserves in the agricultural sector, because this isn't just sheep, it's cattle, it's tomatoes, it's blueberries, it's shrimp, it's sugar, it's all of these things. We must establish a tariff rate quota system when it comes to agriculture. And something that Chuck said yesterday that we haven't really thought of. We've always based our tariff rate quota system off of percentages. You know, it's a percentage. I think it's high time we go to a hard number. It's time we cut to a number, because that compensates for the inflation, that compensates for the exchange rate, because that's another thing nobody wants to take into account. When we first started this project, the Australian dollar was 1.7 to the US dollar. I mean, those guys could sell at basically what was a loss. But the hardest part to watch in all of this is happening in every country. This is a globalist agenda. This is happening in the UK. This is happening in New Zealand. This is happening in Australia. I spent a 2-hour phone call with a man in New Zealand the other night who's a farm consultant. They are getting paid exactly what we're getting paid for our lambs down there in New Zealand. Yet they somehow can ship it over the ocean and undercut our price? No, that's not how it works. There is misdeeds happening as that's crossing the ocean. These exporters, these big global corporations, are extorting our trade laws. They are using them, pitting us against their farmers. This is a global issue. This is a national security issue. And if I could leave you with anything, we have to start taking this serious. So thank you for your time. Thank you for listening.